Captain Jinwoo pressed his palms against the cold metal railing of the observation deck. Through the massive viewport, Earth hung like a blue jewel against the star-filled darkness. He had seen this view countless times, but today felt different. Today everything would change. The research vessel Harmony floated 3,000 kilometers above Earth's surface. Around them, other ships maintained their positions in perfect formation. Scientists, military officers, and government officials from across the solar system had gathered to witness this moment. After decades of theoretical work and careful preparation, humanity was about to test their first stable dimensional gateway. Captain, all monitoring stations confirm ready status. Lieutenant Hygiene called from her position at the communications console. Her young face glowed with excitement, and her fingers moved quickly across the holographic displays. At 26, she was one of the youngest officers ever assigned to such an important mission. Jinwoo remembered feeling that same excitement during his first major assignment 30 years ago. The captain nodded and turned toward the central command platform where Dr. Sung-ho hunched over a complex array of instruments. The elderly scientist's gray hair was disheveled, and his lab coat bore coffee stains from the sleepless nights he had spent preparing for this test. Behind thick glasses, his eyes darted between multiple screens showing energy readings, dimensional calculations, and quantum field measurements. "Doctor, what's our status?" Jinwoo asked, moving to stand beside the scientist. Sung-ho wiped sweat from his forehead despite the cool temperature maintained throughout the ship. "The dimensional field generators are operating within normal parameters, but..." He paused, studying a particular readout that seemed to trouble him. "Captain, I'm seeing some unusual fluctuations in the quantum substrate. The energy levels are climbing beyond what our models predicted." Jinwoo felt a cold knot form in his stomach. He had commanded space vessels for 15 years and had learned to trust his instincts. Something about this situation felt wrong. "Can we compensate for the fluctuations?" "I'm trying, but the field is becoming unstable. Sir, I strongly recommend we abort the test immediately." Sung-ho's voice carried an urgency that made several nearby officers look up from their stations. Before Jinwoo could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Red warning lights bathed the bridge in an ominous glow. On the main display screen, energy readings spiked far beyond safe levels. The dimensional field generator, a massive structure floating between Earth and the Moon, began to pulse with unnatural light. "All ships, this is Harmony Control," Jinwoo spoke into his communicator. "Begin emergency withdrawal procedures. Move to minimum safe distance immediately." But even as he gave the order, he knew they were too late. The space around the dimensional generator began to twist and warp. Reality itself seemed to bend like heated metal. Stars in the background stretched into impossible shapes. The generator's light grew brighter and brighter until it hurt to look at it directly. "Captain?" Lieutenant Hygiene's voice cracked with fear. "I'm receiving emergency transmissions from Earth Control. They're reporting massive gravitational anomalies across the entire planet." Through the viewport, Jinwoo watched in horror as the distortion spread outward from the generator like ripples in a pond. But these ripples were tearing holes in the fabric of space itself. The darkness between stars began to crack, revealing glimpses of something beyond that human eyes were never meant to see. "Earth Control to all vessels," a panicked voice crackled through the communication system. Static interfered with the transmission, making it difficult to understand. "We are experiencing massive system failures. The dimensional field is expanding beyond containment. All population centers are reporting." The transmission cut to silence. On the main screen, Earth began to shimmer like a mirage in desert heat. The familiar continents and oceans wavered as if viewed through water. The Moon, which had orbited Earth for billions of years, started to fade like a ghost at sunrise. "No, no, no," Dr. Sung-ho muttered, his hands flying over his controls in a desperate attempt to stop what they had unleashed. "This isn't possible. The calculations were perfect. The field should have been stable." Jinwoo gripped the railing tighter as the ship shook violently. Through the viewport, he watched his homeworld begin to disappear. Earth's blue oceans turned transparent. The white clouds became wisps of nothing. The green and brown landmasses faded until only a faint outline remained. "Captain, I'm losing contact with all Earth-based stations," Hygiene reported, tears streaming down her face. "Mars orbital platforms are reporting the same thing. It's vanishing." Commander So-young, stationed on the Mars orbital platform, pressed her face against the observation window of her command center. She had been coordinating supply shipments to the outer colonies when the dimensional test began. Now she watched in disbelief as Earth, humanity's birthplace and the center of their civilization, simply ceased to exist. The planet didn't explode. It didn't collapse into a black hole. It didn't burn away in cosmic fire. Earth, along with the moon and the entire inner solar system, was pulled into the dimensional breach like water disappearing down a drain. One moment it was there, solid and real and eternal. The next moment, empty space remained where humanity's homeworld had existed for 4.5 billion years. Silence fell across the bridge of the harmony. Officers stared at their instruments in shock, unable to process what they had just witnessed. Where Earth should have been, only empty darkness remained. The dimensional generator was gone too, swallowed by the same impossible event it had created. 50 million humans living in colonies across 43 star systems suddenly found themselves orphaned, cut off from their origin, with no way home. The classroom on New Busan smelled of recycled air and metal dust. Elderly historian Dong Min stood before 20 children, their faces pale from generations of life under artificial lights. The mining colony had been humanity's home for 500 years, but the children knew nothing of natural sunlight or open skies. "Tell us about the blue world again, teacher," said little Junho, his eyes wide with curiosity. At 8 years old, he had never seen anything blue except the lights on the mining equipment. Dongmin smiled and sat on his worn wooden chair, a relic from the early colonization days. "Earth was different from any world you can imagine," he began, his voice soft with age. The sky stretched endlessly above, painted in shades of blue that changed throughout the day. Rivers flowed freely across the land, carrying fresh water from mountains to seas. The children listened with fascination. On New Busan, water came from recycling plants and underground reservoirs. The sky was the metal ceiling of their underground city, painted gray and lit by harsh fluorescent strips. Young Miso, the brightest student in the class, raised her thin hand. "Teacher, was Earth really real? Some of the older children say it's just a story." Dongmin paused, his weathered face showing uncertainty. He had studied the old records for 60 years, teaching Earth's history to hundreds of students. But even he sometimes wondered if the stories were too fantastic to be true. A world with breathable atmosphere everywhere? Plants that grew without careful tending? Animals that lived freely without genetic modification? "The records say it was real," he answered carefully. "Our ancestors came from there. But it was very different from the worlds we know now." On the agricultural planet New Seoul, thousands of light years away, Governor Taehyun stared at the holographic message that floated above his desk. The alien symbols hurt his eyes to look at, but the translation was clear enough. The Vorthan Empire demanded another increase in food tribute. 20% more grain shipments, he read aloud to his council of advisors. They want it delivered within 2 standard months. Council member Jiwoo shook her head. "Sir, we're already working our farmers 18 hours a day. If we give them any more, our own people will starve." Taehyun rubbed his tired eyes. At 55, he had been governor for 12 years, and each year brought new demands from their alien overlords. Humanity's scattered colonies survived only because alien empires found them useful as suppliers of food, minerals, or cheap labor. "We have no choice," he told the council, his voice heavy with resignation. "Without Earth's protection, without a unified human government, we survive only by their mercy. If we refuse their demands, they'll simply take what they want by force." The other council members nodded grimly. They remembered what happened to New Incheon colony when they tried to resist Vorthan demands. The entire population had been relocated to work camps on distant worlds. No one knew if any of them still lived. Meanwhile, on the lawless frontier world called Jindo Station, Captain Eunji crouched behind a pile of scrap metal, watching enemy ships through her rifle scope. The pirates had been raiding human settlements for months, stealing supplies and kidnapping workers to sell as slaves. Her ship, the Defiant Spirit, sat hidden in a nearby crater. Like most human vessels, it was built from salvaged alien technology, spare parts traded from a dozen different species, and components that barely worked together. Humans had become experts at making something from nothing, but their makeshift technology could never match the advanced ships of the major alien powers. "Captain, I count 6 hostiles," whispered her second-in-command, Sungwoo, through their radio connection. "They're using Zephyrian pulse weapons. Our shields won't hold against that." Eunji grimaced. The human colonies had no weapons manufacturers, no military shipyards, no research facilities to develop new technology. They fought with whatever they could steal, trade for, or jury-rig from broken equipment. "We'll have to be smart instead of strong," she replied. "Wait for my signal." This was humanity now. Not the proud explorers who had once spread across 43 star systems. Not the advanced civilization that had attempted to master dimensional travel. They were scavengers and survivors, making do with scraps while alien empires carved up the galaxy around them. Back in her underground classroom, Dongmin opened an old book with yellowed pages. The cover showed a picture of a blue and green world floating in space. "This is what Earth looked like from space," he told his students. The children gathered closer, touching the picture with wonder. They had never seen so much blue and green in one place. "Were there really that many people living there?" asked Miso. "Billions," Dongmin replied. "More people than live on all our colonies combined." "What happened to them?" The old teacher closed the book slowly. "Nobody knows. Earth vanished and with it all those people. We've been alone ever since." The galaxy had indeed moved on. New alien civilizations had risen from primitive worlds to become major powers. Others had fallen to war, plague, or economic collapse. Trade routes that once connected human colonies now carried goods between alien worlds. Technologies that humans had pioneered were forgotten or claimed by other species. To most of the universe, humanity was nothing more than scattered refugees from a lost world that existed only in fading memories and old stories. They worked in alien factories, farmed alien-owned land, and fought with alien-made weapons. They survived, but they no longer thrived. The blue world was gone, and with it, humanity's place among the stars. Communications Officer Jae-sung had worked the night shift at New Taegu Monitoring Station for 3 years. He was used to quiet hours watching empty space, tracking asteroid movements and logging routine cargo ship passages. Nothing exciting ever happened in Sector 7. That's why they put the monitoring station there. But tonight was different. Jae-sung rubbed his tired eyes and looked at his instruments again. The readings made no sense. His screens showed massive gravitational disturbances in what should have been empty space. Energy signatures that defied every law of physics he had learned in training school. "This can't be right," he muttered, running the deep space scan for the 3rd time. The results came back identical. Something impossible was happening 50 light-years away. He reached for his communicator with shaking hands. "Commander Yoon-ah, please report to the monitoring station immediately. We have a situation." Within minutes, Station Commander Yoon-ah burst through the door, her uniform hastily thrown on over her nightclothes. At 42 she had spent 20 years in space and thought she had seen everything. But when she looked at Jae-sung's instruments, her face went pale. "What am I looking at?" she whispered. Jae-sung pointed at his main display screen. "Sir, I'm detecting massive gravitational anomalies in Sector 7. But that's not the strangest part." He switched to a different view. Space itself appears to be tearing. On the screen they watched something that should have been impossible. Reality was splitting open like fabric, revealing a darkness deeper than the void between stars. And from that tear, something enormous was emerging. "Get me a connection to Terran Remnant Command," Yuna ordered. Priority 1 emergency. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out at every major observatory. On the agricultural world of New Seoul, the primitive telescope array detected the same gravitational disturbances. On Jindo Station, Captain Eunji's ship sensors went crazy with readings she couldn't understand. Even the alien monitoring stations of the Vorthan Empire registered the impossible event. In the Terran Remnant Council chambers on New Incheon, President Kyung-soo was pulled from his sleep by urgent messages from 17 different human colonies. The council meeting room filled quickly with confused officials and frightened scientists. Chief Science Advisor Haewon arrived clutching a tablet full of sensor readings. Her gray hair was disheveled, and her hands shook as she addressed the emergency assembly. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice trembling with disbelief. At 0347 Standard Time, monitoring stations across human space detected massive spatial distortions in Sector 7. "What we're seeing defies everything we know about physics." She activated the large display screen at the front of the room. The assembled officials gasped as they saw the images transmitted from various telescopes and sensor arrays. "It's a solar system," Haewon announced, struggling to keep her voice steady. "A complete solar system materializing from nothing. 1 star, 8 planets, asteroid belts, and extensive artificial structures." President Kyung-soo leaned forward in his chair. "How is that possible? Solar systems don't just appear from nowhere." "Sir, that's not even the most shocking part." Haewon switched to a detailed view of the 3rd planet from the materialized star. "This planet matches Earth's exact orbital distance and period. But it's approximately 40% larger than Earth was in our historical records." The room fell silent. Everyone knew the implications but no one dared speak them aloud. Meanwhile, 3 sectors away, Young navigator Wu Jin was working alone on the merchant vessel Lucky Dragon when his ship's automatic sensors detected the spatial disturbance. At 24, he was the youngest certified navigator in the merchant fleet, known for his sharp eyes and steady hands. The ship's ancient telescopes weren't designed for deep space observation, but Wu Jin managed to aim them toward Sector 7. What he saw through the eyepiece made him forget to breathe. The materialized planet was covered with continents that looked almost familiar, but they were arranged differently than in the old Earth maps he had studied in school. Vast cities gleamed like jewels across the surface, their lights visible even from this incredible distance. But most amazing of all were the structures reaching up from the planet's surface. Space elevators, he whispered to himself. But they're massive. They stretch beyond the orbital plane. Around the planet he could see space stations the size of moons, ring structures that enclosed portions of the system, and ships that dwarfed anything in the known galaxy. The technology on display made even the greatest alien megaprojects look primitive. Wu Jin activated his ship's emergency transmitter and broadcast on all human frequencies. "This is Navigator Wu Jin aboard the Lucky Dragon. I have visual confirmation of the spatial anomaly in Sector 7. His voice cracked with emotion. "The planet, it looks like Earth. The continents are similar but reformed. And the technology." He paused, struggling to find words. "Earth has returned. But it's different. It's so much more than it was before." The message spread across human space faster than light-speed communication had ever carried news before. Colony governors called emergency meetings. Scientists abandoned their research to focus on the impossible readings. Military commanders wondered if this was an invasion or a miracle. On New Busan, old teacher Dongmin received word during his evening meal. The blue world from his stories had returned, but it was no longer the simple planet he had described to his students. Across the galaxy, 50 million scattered humans faced the same stunning realization. Their lost homeworld had come back after 500 years of absence. But this was not the Earth that had vanished. This was something far greater, far more advanced, and far more mysterious than anything they could have imagined. The age of human exile was about to end, but what would replace it remained completely unknown. Captain Ji-hoon gripped the armrests of his command chair as his ship approached the impossible sight before them. The vessel Unity represented the combined human colonies, carrying diplomats and scientists from 17 different worlds. But compared to the structures surrounding Earth, their ship looked like a toy made by children. Massive rings circled the planet, each one large enough to house billions of people. Space elevators stretched impossibly high, reaching far beyond what any material should have been able to support. Ships the size of cities moved between orbital platforms with graceful ease. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission," reported Communications Officer Minho, his voice tight with nervousness. "It's coming directly to us on a frequency we've never seen before." "Put it on screen," Ji-hoon ordered. Before he could even send out a greeting, a warm voice filled the bridge. "Welcome home, distant children." The main display activated, showing a woman who appeared to be in her 30s. She had kind eyes and a gentle smile, but there was something unsettling about her gaze. It held depths that spoke of experiences beyond normal human understanding. Her uniform was elegant but completely unlike anything from Earth's historical records. "I am Admiral Su Jin of the Earth Defense Fleet," she continued. "We have been waiting for this moment for a very long time." Ji-hoon found his voice after a moment of shocked silence. "Admiral, I am Captain Ji-hoon, representing the Terran Colonial Alliance. Are you really from Earth?" "I was born on this world, yes," she replied with a slight smile. "Though the Earth I knew no longer exists. We invite your delegation aboard our station. There is much we need to explain and much you need to understand about what happened to us." An hour later, Ji-hoon and his diplomatic team found themselves in a shuttle approaching one of Earth's orbital platforms. The structure was so large that it had its own weather systems, with clouds forming in its upper atmosphere. Through the transparent walls, they could see gardens and lakes floating in zero gravity, defying everything they knew about physics. The docking bay could have held 100 ships like theirs. Strange vehicles moved through the air without any visible means of propulsion. People walked on walls and ceilings as easily as on floors, and some seemed to be moving through solid barriers as if they were made of mist. "This is impossible," whispered Dr. Bo Young, the colonial delegation's chief scientist. "How are they doing any of this?" Their escort, a young man who introduced himself simply as Tae-woo, smiled at her confusion. "What you see as impossible, we learn to see as simply another way of existing. When reality becomes your enemy, you must learn to change reality itself." The meeting chamber defied all logic. It appeared to be a simple room with walls, floor and ceiling, but somehow it felt infinitely large. The space seemed to bend and flow around them, as if they were sitting inside a bubble that existed in multiple dimensions at the same time. President Namho entered the chamber walking through what appeared to be a solid wall. He looked like a man in his early 30s with bright eyes and an energetic step. But when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of centuries. "Welcome, children of the stars," he said, taking a seat that materialized from thin air. "I know you have many questions. Let me try to answer them." Ji-hoon cleared his throat nervously. "Sir, our records show that Earth vanished 500 years ago. Where have you been?" Namho's expression grew serious. "When the dimensional experiment failed, Earth wasn't destroyed. We were pulled into what you might call a pocket dimension, a space between realities where the normal laws of physics didn't apply." Dr. Bo-young leaned forward eagerly. "What was it like there?" "Hostile beyond your imagination," Namho replied calmly. "We faced entities that existed between realities, creatures that fed on dimensional energy and saw our world as nothing more than food. The environment itself was our enemy. Physics storms would sweep across the planet, rewriting matter at the atomic level, turning mountains into gas or air into solid crystal. The colonial delegation exchanged shocked glances. Such conditions should have killed every living thing on Earth within days. "How did you survive?" asked Ambassador Kyungmin. "We adapted," Namho said simply. "We had no choice. Evolution became a matter of survival, not millions of years of gradual change. We learned to manipulate matter and energy directly. We discovered how to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. We transcended the limitations of baseline human biology." Admiral Sujin appeared in the room, stepping through what had seemed like empty air. "Our population grew from 8 billion to over 100 billion during our exile. But we also became something more than what we were before." "More than human?" Ji-hoon asked. "Still human," she corrected. "But human as we were always meant to be. We mastered technologies that treat space and time as resources to be shaped rather than barriers to be overcome. We learned to think in ways that encompass multiple realities at once." Dr. Bo-young stared at the impossible architecture around them. "The things we're seeing, matter manipulation, dimensional folding, gravity control, these should take thousands of years to develop." President Namho smiled sadly. "In normal space, yes. But we didn't have thousands of years. We had to evolve or die, and we chose evolution. Every day brought new challenges that forced us to become more than we were." "And now you've returned," Ambassador Kyungmin observed. Admiral Sujin nodded. "We've returned, but not as the Earth you remember from your histories and stories. We are what humanity can become when pushed beyond all limits. We are your future and you are our past." The weight of this revelation settled over the colonial delegation like a heavy blanket. Their lost homeworld had not only survived, but had become something magnificent and terrifying. In the grand throne room of the Vorthan Empire, Emperor Vrex crushed the data tablet in his massive clawed hand. The reports from across the galaxy all said the same impossible thing. The scattered human colonies, whom he had treated as nothing more than useful vassals for decades, were suddenly backed by a civilization that made his mighty empire look like children playing with toys. "How is this possible?" he roared at his cowering advisors. "Yesterday humans begged for our protection. Today their ships appear in our space and our weapons cannot even scratch their hulls." General Zeth, his most trusted military commander, stepped forward nervously. "My lord, our intelligence suggests that Earth, their lost homeworld, has returned. But it's not the primitive planet from their histories. They possess technology we cannot understand." Vrex's red eyes burned with fury and fear. The Vorthan Empire had ruled this sector of the galaxy for 3,000 years. They had conquered hundreds of worlds, enslaved dozens of species, and built the mightiest fleet in known space. The idea that a bunch of scattered human refugees could suddenly threaten his power was unthinkable. "Send our fastest ships to test their defenses," he commanded. "I want to know exactly what we're facing." Meanwhile, on the mining colony of New Busan, old teacher Dongmin stood in the town square watching massive ships descend from the sky. These vessels moved without sound, without visible engines, and seemed to bend space around them as they landed. The ships were beautiful, crafted from materials that shifted color in the light and hummed with barely contained energy. The children from his classroom gathered around him, their pale faces filled with wonder. Miso, now a young woman of 25, stood beside her old teacher with tears in her eyes. "Is this really happening, teacher?" she whispered. "Are they really from Earth?" Before Dongmin could answer, A figure approached them from the nearest ship. The woman looked human, but she moved with impossible grace, her feet barely seeming to touch the ground. Her clothes were simple but seemed to be made from living light. "I am Ambassador Hyorin from Earth," she said, her voice warm and gentle. "We have come to help our distant family." Within hours, everything on New Busan changed. Earth's engineers taught the colonists to transmute matter at the molecular level, turning worthless rock into any material they needed. The mining operation that had sustained the colony for 5 centuries became obsolete in a single day. Food grew in abundance from previously barren soil. Clean water flowed freely from devices no larger than a person's hand. "Are we still human?" Miso asked as she watched her world transform around her. "Or are we becoming something else?" Ambassador Hyorin smiled gently. "You are human as we are human. We have simply learned to be more than what we once were. This knowledge, this power, it is your birthright as children of Earth." Across human space, similar scenes played out on every colony world. The choice was always the same: join the new Earth and be uplifted to unimaginable heights, or maintain independence and be left behind in the old ways. Most colonies chose integration, but those who wished to remain separate were not forced to change. On New Seoul, Governor Taehyun met with Earth's representatives in his simple office. The contrast was striking. His worn furniture and flickering lights compared to their radiant presence and impossible technology. "We do not conquer," explained the Earth diplomat. "We do not force our ways upon others. We offer choice. Join us and share in humanity's new future, or continue as you are. Both paths have value." Taehyun thought of the years of tribute payments, the humiliation of bowing to alien masters, the constant fear that his people might be relocated to work camps. "What happens to our independence? Our culture? Our identity?" "They remain yours," came the gentle reply. "We are not here to erase who you have become during our long absence. We are here to help you become who you choose to be." The galaxy's reaction was swift and varied. The peaceful crystalline confederation sent ambassadors offering friendship and shared knowledge. The trade-focused merchant alliance immediately began negotiations for exclusive contracts. Smaller powers scrambled to establish diplomatic relations, hoping to gain favor with humanity's new manifestation. But not everyone was pleased with the change. The Vorthan war fleet that Emperor Vrex sent to test Earth's defenses never returned. They simply vanished as they approached Earth's outer sensor range. No distress signals, no wreckage, nothing. It was as if they had never existed. Fleet Admiral Sung Min commanded Earth's first official diplomatic mission to the Galactic Center. His ship, the Eternal Dawn, could reshape reality around itself as it traveled. When he arrived at the Great Space Station where the Galactic Council met, representatives from hundreds of species waited to meet him. His message was simple and clear: humanity seeks cooperation, not conquest. We offer friendship to those who offer it in return. We offer protection to those who need it. But we will no longer be overlooked, dismissed, or mistreated. The age of humanity hiding in the shadows is over. Young navigator Wu Jin now served aboard one of Earth's reality-bending vessels. As he looked out at the stars through windows that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, he marveled at how vibrant the universe seemed. Colors were brighter, distances seemed smaller, and possibilities felt endless. "We're going home," he whispered to himself, though he had never seen Earth before its return. The scattered had become the gathered. The lost had become the found. The weak had become the mighty. Earth's children had evolved beyond recognition, but they remained fundamentally human in the ways that mattered most: their curiosity, their compassion, and their determination to help each other reach for the stars. Humanity's long exile was over. Their true journey among the stars was just beginning.